Hey, Rebel Rouser. I'm Alan Voivod, and this is Star Wars 7x7. We're at episode number 1594, and there have been a couple of developments on the front of The Mandalorian that I thought I'd check in with you about. But here's the thing, as I'm looking through this stuff, I'm starting to get a little conspiracy theory oriented, and so I'll explain what I mean in a moment. Basically, it starts with the fact that a gentleman named Pedro Pascal has been reported as being the person who's going to lead the Mandalorian series. Now, if you watch Game of Thrones, you might know him as Prince Oberyn, and if you have watched Narcos on Netflix, he is Javier Pena there, and he's been in a whole bunch of other things too. But, Variety is making the report on this, and they're actually following up on something that was broken by MakingStarWars.net previously. But when you actually read the article from Variety, it doesn't say that he actually has the role. What it says is that industry insiders had been saying that this was a rumor, this is possibly happening, blah blah blah, and now industry insiders are saying that he's been selected for the role and that negotiations are underway, but that doesn't necessarily mean he actually has the role. So he probably does have the role, whatever the role is, and they say it's for the lead in The Mandalorian. But this is where I start to get a little nutty in my head because of just what we know or what we think we know about The Mandalorian. First of all, we've seen the photo that Jon Favreau posted of a person in Mandalorian armor. So, in theory, that person is a Mandalorian for sure, and the Mandalorian, maybe? We don't necessarily know if the Mandalorian is actually walking around in Mandalorian armor. Whoever is leading this show might not actually own a set of Mandalorian armor right now, for all we know. So just the assumptions that we are all making about this series and about its premise and about these little elements that surround it, it is really all stuff that they could just utterly and completely pull the rug out from under us. So, Pedro Pascal may actually be, the lead actor and thus may be a Mandalorian, but may not be the Mandalorian that we've seen in costume, especially if, the whole thing is that, well, he's in talks for the lead role or a role, but that doesn't mean he's actually been signed. So why would we be seeing anybody in costume walking around? That doesn't make sense necessarily unless it's a body double for someone whoever is going to play the Mandalorian, if that's the Mandalorian. Which then sort of leads me to the other thing, which is, do they even really need to hire anybody that we've ever heard of? I suppose they do to some degree, because having a reasonably well-known name, or at least a quality name, if you will, certainly is a selling point for the series. But they don't even necessarily need those folks on set. With something like The Mandalorian, for example, whoever's inside that armor, we might not ever see them out of the armor, and so it could be an utterly random person in there, and we're getting the voice of the person being looped in via ADR or post-production or something like that. So, like David Prowse in the Darth Vader armor and James Earl Jones doing the voice. And you could do that not just with the Mandalorian or a Mandalorian, but you could do it with every single alien on set. You could do it with all of the different humanoid characters who might have various makeup, prosthetics, and all that sort of thing. Heck, Dennis Lawson played Wedge in the original Star Wars, but he was overdubbed. So there's so many different ways that they could go about this that it's almost mind-blowingly crazy to think that, yeah, maybe this is really going to be more complicated than we think. Like Luke says in The Last Jedi, it's not going to go the way we think. Maybe. Just maybe. Anyway, and that's all on the heels of the fact that, well, the Pedro Pascal thing seems to be working out. So now what's the next rumor? Well, apparently, according to MakingStarWars.net, the next rumor is that Carl Weathers might actually show up in this thing. Yes, the original Apollo Creed, Carl Weathers, is now someone who is rumored to have a role in this. And there's another website called Discussing Film, which has popped up on our radar once or twice here at Star Wars 7x7, and we've mentioned them here. And they say they've reached out to their own sources and are hearing the same thing, that this Carl Weathers thing is actually legit. So that in itself would be pretty amazing. And Carl Weathers has been more active in his TV guest star appearances and recurring guest star appearances and so forth. So, you know, it wouldn't be all that much of a stretch just from, you know, his industry activity and so on and so forth. But anyway, yeah, I'm starting to get a little crazy in my head about The Mandalorian, and, you know, just, hey, we don't necessarily know. We're taking a lot of stuff for granted. You know, it seems like Pedro Pascal really is going to be cast in this thing. And, you know, whether it's a lead role, you know, whether it's that Mandalorian that we actually saw in Jon Favreau's photo on Instagram, what that means, you know, I think there's still a lot more that we have to learn. And I think there's still a lot more that they are not only, you know, keeping quiet from us, because, I mean, they've got everything locked down tight, but, you know, it makes sense to me that they might also be giving us things for which we can jump to conclusions that might not necessarily be the right conclusions, but, you know, they're very carefully crafted so that way we jump to a conclusion that they want us to jump to. Yeah, so, yeah, I'm getting a little nutty about this, I swear. Anyway, we'll try and keep it calm for the time being. And I think we'll call it a podcast from here, just so that I can go calm down about my, you know, Mandalorian craziness. But before I go, I want to say thank you so much to Stephen Howard, who just became a patron of the podcast. I'm so incredibly grateful for his support through Roku Depot and now also through Patreon as well. And I hope you will consider checking out Roku Depot. That's ROQOO Depot, and all of the work that they do in covering lots of Star Wars podcasts, including Star Wars 7x7. And I hope you'll consider supporting the show like Steven did at patreon.com/SW7x7. I hope you'll also subscribe to the show wherever you happen to be catching it, so that way you get the next one delivered to you without you having to even think about it. It just shows up for you. A daily dose of Star Wars joy. That's the whole idea. And yeah, the other thing to say, of course, is may the Force be with you, wherever in the world you may be.
This podcast is not endorsed or sponsored yet by Lucasfilm Limited, Disney, or 20th Century Fox, and is intended for entertainment and information purposes only. Star Wars, the Star Wars logo, all names and pictures of Star Wars characters, vehicles, and any other Star Wars-related items are registered trademarks and/or copyrights of Lucasfilm Limited or their respective trademark and copyright holders. May the Force be with them. All original content is copyright 2018 Star Wars 7x7. We hope you love it.